This is a paid advertisement. Attention metrics are part of the zeitgeist, and for good reason. The industry needs a better quality measure than viewability. According to the IAB, 90% of advertisers plan to use attention metrics this year, so there's a good chance they're on your radar. If you're part of this forward-thinking majority, it's time to familiarize yourself with the Adelaide's AU. Endorsed by Adweek as the attention economy's most widely recognized metric, AU is available in nearly every DSP, SSP, and ad network. Learn more at AdelaideMetrics.com. That's AdelaideMetrics.com. Welcome to the Marketecture podcast. I'm Ari Papero. I'm joined today by Eric Franchi and our guest, Lara O'Reilly, the senior correspondent from Insider. Lara, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, finally.
We've run the circle of every senior reporter that covers ad tech, but we forgot you for some reason. I don't know. There's no good excuse given your extensive background in this space.
Maybe it's a distance thing. I'm London-based. For people who don't know, I'm in the UK.
You want to run us through all the places that you've been covering ad tech? So you were at the Wall Street Journal. Were you an ad exchanger?
I was not. No. I started out at Marketing Week, the UK trade publication that covers marketing weekly, as you'd guess. It used to be a magazine. Then I went to Business Insider the first time around when it was still known as Business Insider. Yeah, then the Wall Street Journal. Did a brief stint at Yahoo Finance, not doing ad tech, and then couldn't keep myself away. Came back and reported again on ad tech. And
so you used to be known as just a senior ad tech reporter, but now you're known as Joe Zawadzki's stalker.
Yeah, it was. I got promoted.
No, what I'm referring to, probably everyone knows, is that Lara has over the past 6 months just reported the hell out of MediaMath. Multiple articles about before it went bankrupt. I want to just tee that up and talk about it. So how much time have you been spending covering this? How have you found all this info? What have you found? Talk MediaMath for a while.
I mean, like the long answer is kind of like, 9 years, really. I joined BI the first time around, the first rodeo in 2014, and I knew nothing about ad tech. And I was an editor as well as a writer then. And the first story I edited was about MediaMath. And I was trying to wrap my brain. I think MediaMath was one of the first kind of ad tech companies I held a meeting with when the US team came to London. So I'm not just being facetious when I say it, but it's kind of been like 9 years in the making. And that's how I've got to know the company and the people in it and around it so well.
What was that first article about? Do you remember?
So this was one of our reporters had been asking around, like, who is the star company in ad tech that everybody should pay attention to? And one answer kept coming up, and it was MediaMath.
Is MediaMath the best story in ad tech? Like the rise, fall, hubris, etc. Are you going to make a book out of this? A movie?
What can I say? No, not really. It's not really the best, is it? I feel like, it's a sad story. Someone described it as a kind of Shakespearean tragedy. That said, it's got all the elements, the highs, the lows, there's lots of opinions on who the victors are and who the villains are. So I don't know. Who do you think should play Joe?
I was just racking my brain about who would play Joe. Readers, please, or listeners, please chime in on social media about who would be the correct actor to play Joe.
You have to start with the hair, right?
You have to start with the hair. Oh, you can make the hair up. I think you need some height too. But what is the story? So, Lara, if we're at a cocktail party and I wasn't in ad tech, it's hard to believe. And I was like, what are you working on? What's the interesting story? How would you explain MediaMath to someone who's just interested in the salacious details and not particularly in our industry?
And just look, before I do, just to kind of like a look behind the curtain. So every time I write about MediaMath, I get a bunch, well, at least recently, given what's happened in the bankruptcy, I get a bunch of messages saying, thank you for taking the time to tell the story and for going and, taking the lengths to get all the accuracy and the detail. And then for kind of every 5 of them, I get another one saying I got it wrong or I shouldn't have written it at all. One person accused me of spitting on the company's grave when I wrote the story about MediaMath's final days, which is an opinion, I guess. Hello, if you're listening, by the way. So I just like they're like emotions are running high, obviously, because there's a lot of people involved, and there's a lot of love for the company and the people, and people are owed money. There's and it's also kind of a very kind of complicated story, as I said, where it's and it's still it's not finished, by the way, but anyway, to explain it, it's a very long story about kind of one of the OGs of ad tech, and as I say, it was a pioneer kind of and ahead of its time in so many areas. And so MediaMath claims, although this is also disputed, so I'm just going to continue girding my inbox for everyone saying that I'm wrong, but it was a pioneer. It invented the first demand sign platform, according to MediaMath, and they assembled this kind of A team of ad tech royalty who's gone on to work for big companies like Google and Amazon, or started successful startups of their own. And they were really ahead of their time in terms of kind of supply chain transparency and predicting that marketers would want to own more programmatic in-house. And that was kind of the central vision, which in some ways is playing out now a little if you look at things like retail media, although MediaMath didn't really have a play there. But also in other respects, perhaps that was considered one element of its downfall, that MediaMath kind of eschewed the agencies and focused too much on the marketers, and by which point the trade desk came in and ate its lunch because it focused very keenly on just the agencies. So yeah, MediaMath grew and grew, and it had kind of hundreds of millions of dollars in ad spend passing through its system, and 700 employees at one point, and a cool office at 4 World Trade Center. And it had all these opportunities to sell to companies like IBM and Singtel and Bain, but kind of kept holding on for, it was never quite right. It was never quite the right, deal size, right time, right owner. So I'm telling this in a very long way, but essentially, they went with a private equity firm where essentially probably didn't get as much protection as they should have done on if things kind of went to the downside, which they did through COVID. Essentially had a bit of a straitjacket as far as their credit agreement was concerned with Goldman Sachs. A new management team's brought in. They thought they had 2 years to turn it around. The PE owner calls out to the blue and says, actually, no, you've got 3 months to, find some more money or sell the company because we're not giving you any more. They almost got there with Media Games Invest. They pulled out last minute, and then they just tried everything, but ultimately ran out of time and money. And now the company is no more and being sold for parts in a couple of time.
I have a lot of follow-up questions. One of them is, you said the story's not over yet. What do you mean by that?
There's going to be a bankruptcy auction for its assets. So someone could come along and try to purchase the whole thing, or it could be sold for parts. So maybe somebody comes and buys the ad server component, someone, I don't know,
right,
like that kind of thing. So that there could be a second act of MediaMath.
Well, it seems really challenging to restart a stopped plane in midair like that. They haven't been bidding for weeks, and to be able to get the customers back and get them using it, that just seems really challenging to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of a company is its people and its expertise and its clients, and presumably it costs a lot of money to switch DSPs, and some clients will have been forced to do that already. So
right,
are they going to come back? But there are also other things you might be able to do with the tech, like integrate it into a company that doesn't have demand side technology at the moment, and perhaps might find a use for it.
So you mentioned the question of selling to agencies versus marketers, and a lot of people say that was the big mistake that caused a lot of other problems. Other people say the big problem was bad financing or too much financing or whatever, however you want to say it. And then when I posted on Twitter some of these thoughts, people chimed in that they missed video. That was actually their biggest mistake. Or they spent too much time on direct-to-consumer, which turned out to be a kind of a bad sector. Is there one thing that sticks out for you as the fatal flaw?
Honestly, no, and that would have made it a lot easier a story to write. I think it was just a combination of, maybe picking the wrong swim lane on certain things, bad luck, bad timing, investors with different incentives or thoughts about where the company could go, maybe too much restructuring and changes of people's roles, things like that, or hopping from, new thing to new thing. COVID really didn't help. And I think, the Harvard Business School case study, and I think a lot of people have kind of written this in their postmortems, is it just kind of highlights the kind of shaky dynamics of edtech and the reliance of so many companies on credit in order to maintain a healthy working capital, because we've all just, you guys, you idiots, have all come to accept that everybody just pays late and that's fine. And sequential liability is just a thing that we all put up with and hope doesn't happen. Hope we're not the ones holding the bag. But it's no coincidence that Joe's now working on a fintech startup that looks to solve for all these kind of exact issues.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. And Eric, you're an investor in that as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Eric's notably silent throughout this entire segment.
Joe's sitting next to Eric right now.
Yeah, he's cleaning up one of the thing.
The bat.
Sus is familiar with the matter, so Eric has no comment.
You said something funny just now, which is like, you idiots in ad tech. Do you feel that way a lot?
I mean, not just ad tech. I mean, advertising, I think, in general, is just like the most ridiculous industry, which is why it's so fun to write about. Like, I'm being facetious, but of course there is lots of genius and creativity, but there's also just a lot of like ridiculous ways things are done just because that's the way they've always been done. Like TV upfronts and Cannes and just stupid things like that.
How much do you focus on the ridiculousness versus the innovation and creativity and genius from the perspective from the perspective of what resonates with the insider audience, which is the goal, right? And you've got interesting insight and analytics. Like, what do people? It's obvious what the answer is given the subject matter we've been talking about. But like, what do people like to read?
Look, we're not trade press, although what we do is quite similar in that we have, there's not many mainstream business publications that have such a keen focus on, say, ad tech, for instance, because or like the niches of advertising. Perhaps they have teams that cover advertising, but it's usually more of a kind of a broader kind of 30,000 feet look at things. Well, not always, but I guess the answer is the stories that people like are the ones that are, I mean, are enjoyable to read, have an obvious tension and protagonist, and something you learn from, something that surprises you, something that you feel compelled to share, and often that isn't a feature update from an ad tech company.
As a former CEO of an ad tech company, the last thing anyone in marketing or press wants to hear is like, we have a new feature out, you should write about us. No one cares.
That being said, we do things like we celebrate the ad tech companies VCs are most excited about. In fact, I participated in the one of those that we just put out a month ago.
Can I just tell you how much hell I got for that?
Why? What was the hell?
So we're an investor in a lot of companies. I couldn't overload Lara's inbox with all of them, right? So it's, thinking through, sort of like given the criteria that Lara asked for, who's the appropriate companies to nominate. But then number two, I don't know if it was well understood what the criteria was. So companies that had not raised in the past 12 to 18 months, sort of like, the couple of criteria that you gave me, Lara, to sort of like winnow it down. People that were not necessarily fits for the list were had a lot of questions.
Like picking between your favorite children.
Yeah, everyone thinks that their VC loves them, unless they really hate them.
I get that. It's I don't know.
But the lists are great.
Those things, but yeah. So we do, and we celebrate the people, and we've got a innovative CMO list coming out soon, and that kind of thing. And we do cover, particularly when there are new trends and technologies like AI and retail media. We do a spotlight on those. But I guess the thing about us is it's more driven by, us and our editorial instincts and what our readers are showing us they're interested in, rather than the companies telling us that they have a product update and it comes out on this day or that kind of thing.
And as a reporter who covers this area, you must see some really strange things. I mean, the ad tech community tends to get pretty pissed at the pubs, I'd imagine. And the conferences you have to go to are often, a little bit out there, is what I would say. Care to comment on that?
I mean, sure. There's I think also because it's a very close community, right? And I imagine if you cover, I don't know, another community where there's a small kind of subset of people who have kind of built companies, sold them, reinvest in other company. I imagine it's similar in other areas. I'm racking my brains to think about one. I don't know, cannabis tech or something. Like there's a community of people who all kind of know each other and have their own politics between them. So I think that adds like a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know.
Spice to the mix sometimes.
I find Martech people are boring. That's my general. So you're based in London, and London has sort of its own distinct ad tech scene that's like very agency centric, and they tend to do a lot of breakfast. It's all breakfast. In the U.S., no one has breakfast meetings.
I was going to say it all happens at the Tinkers, the Guinness bar in Soho.
Is London ad tech scene still kind of happening, or is Brexit affecting it? Is it something you cover?
I don't cover it as a phenomenon, but I just speak to a lot of people in the industry, and it's where I live, so I'm closest to those. Let's say closest to those people that make it sound like I'm like pledging allegiances. But is Brexit affecting it? I mean, probably. There's a cost of living price crisis and inflation and interest rates are up. Like that, I'm sure that adds to things, and it makes it harder to recruit over here, and wages are much lower. So I'm sure. I'm sure it kind of adds to it. It's certainly been just broadly has had an impact, I think, on the ad industry kind of writ large here.
Yeah, I think ITV just announced this week that they are having significant weakness in their television business. That's not ad tech per se, but it's similar.
Yeah, it's like the biggest self-sabotage I think a country has done in my lifetime that I can think of.
Yeah, I agree. So this week was earnings week, so we have a lot of news. So we're going to switch and start talking about the news of the week after a quick break. All right, we're back. Big news in earnings. So Google had a big earnings beat with YouTube up 4% after several quarters of it being flat or down. Me and my ex-DoubleClick friends like to call this the Neil Mohan magic. And I think he's probably a man on a mission to make that grow again. And then also Meta was up 11% after quite a bit of stagnation on their revenue growth. Is this kind of a broad bellwether for advertising being back, or are these two companies kind of special? Maybe Eric, you want to talk about your thoughts about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm hopeful that this is a trend. Number one, right? Because these are, the largest companies out there. And I think they do set the tone for the market. Snap was down, but eBay was up. So it's like, I think you can probably find, if one chooses, stories to support any narrative. But, Google was up overall. Meta was up significantly overall, albeit off a reduced base. And they had good guidance for Q3. And that sort of maps to what I'm hearing in the market, where it's like, okay, thank God, first half is over. We're in Q3. The rest of the year, seems to be pretty good. So I think, I think it supports that it could be a positive second half of the year. Two, Brian Weiser, friend of the pod, had in his note that there were a couple of large marketers that noted in their own earnings that they're investing more heavily in the second half in marketing and advertising. Specifically, it was Coca-Cola, Danone, and Reckitt Benckiser. So I think that's number two. And then number three, I think this tailwind of AI is real. They're all talking about it because they all have to talk about it, and they're all saying the same thing. But again, from what I'm seeing and hearing and how this is mapped to products, like as you can imagine, ad tech advertising is, the first area of, I think, obvious benefits with AI around creative and targeting and algos, so on and so forth. And I think with a lot of these sort of network-like products, it's driving a lot of growth, and it will continue to.
Lara, anything you're hearing?
This is well timed because literally 27 minutes ago, I published a story with the headline, "The advertising winter may finally be starting to thaw," which essentially covers. Yes, please do. Please click and subscribe and say that you subscribe specifically because of this article. So yeah, I think Meta and Alphabet are quite good bellwethers, and as Eric pointed out, like a lot of the big advertising spenders are all saying that they want to increase their
I didn't read
spend.
your article. I'm looking at it right now.
And it's,
Sorry, thunder, but I did not.
No, it's fine. I mean, in all honesty, I also quote Brian in this because he was some of the inspiration for it. And I also spoke to the ad research firm. I don't know how to pronounce it. WARC, WARC, who said that they're going to basically increase their forecast next month for global ad spend for 2023. Basically, in light of all of this, one thing I will say though is like not everywhere is predicting an uplift in marketing outlay. Like it's kind of quite funny that the biggest beneficiaries of this advertising rebound, the tech companies like Meta and Microsoft, are all having their years of efficiencies and lowering their advertising spend. So
Right.
yeah, thanks guys. But there are like there's more kind of positive signs, I think, than negative. And something that Brian kind of pointed out as well is that marketers have been apprehensive for so long because everyone keeps saying there's going to be a recession in the US that still hasn't come to pass. And all that happens is because the economists don't want to be wrong. They just keep pushing out their forecasts and saying, oh, it will happen a bit later than we thought. So it just means this apprehension just kind of becomes prolonged and nobody wants to make long-term investment decisions. So which is kind of great for digital advertising, not so great if you're selling TV or you want to get someone on some big digital transformation project or something like that.
The Fed announced in the U.S. The guidance that they no longer are forecasting a recession at all. So that should accelerate spend. And 2024 is the political and Olympics year. So we could be in for some pretty positive experience over the forthcoming 18 months. I want to point out though the Snap miss. So I'm unfortunately a Snap shareholder and have been for a long time, and they never cease to disappoint. Earnings season for them is always a disaster. It's like one root canal after another. And I think that Eric Seufert, our contributor to Marketecture, he covers this so well. And I'm going to just boil down his very broadly what he's saying, which is Meta took Apple's ATT seriously, and Snap didn't. And that's where we're seeing divergence. We're now, like, I guess 2 years later after ATT first rolled out. Meta had some hard quarters. They had to tweak an enormous amount of things about their giant advertising system, but then they did it because they're known for quite good engineering and execution. And Snap did not take it that seriously. They have less scale, less AI, and as a result, they're continuing to disappoint. Where, for both companies, the majority of their advertising is mobile. So you should check out Eric's essays on these subjects at mobiledevmemo.com. Speaking of MediaMath, we now are starting to see some reverberation from the MediaMath bankruptcy with some SSPs. Ad exchangers reporting that some SSPs are clawing back revenue from publishers, while other SSPs, notably, we mentioned GumGum a couple weeks ago, but now Index Exchange has come out and said they will not be clawing back from publishers. This is an interesting kind of nuance, and Larry, you had talked about sequential liability. How do you think this plays out?
Yeah, I don't know if this is coincidental or not, but it is quite interesting that the two public SSPs, Pubmatic and Magnite, are the ones that are saying they're kind of unable to. Well, actually, sorry, they're recouping the revenue paid to publishers from the MediaMath deals. I don't know if that's related or not. I'm just saying that is a kind of interesting thing to think about.
Right. So you think maybe it's because they're in the public eye that they would have to show a miss in earnings or something if they didn't do it?
I guess so, yeah. And I mean, the likelihood of them being able to claw back a substantial amount from the bankruptcy proceedings. Everyone's talking about pennies on the dollars. So I don't know, maybe it's kind of take the hit now rather than say, not take the hit now rather than kind of hold out and say, well, we might be able to recoup this later on. I don't know. I haven't particularly looked into it. I think just, again, this just speaks to second order effects when there's a big catastrophic event like this. And I think it will also, given payment terms are 90, so up to 180 days, I don't think we're going to see the full effect of the MediaMath bankruptcy and fallout for, a few months to come at least.
These are public companies. And I think it needs to be considered that public companies just have certain restrictions that private companies do not. I think that's thing one. Thing two is there's likely ways that, these SSPs can make publishers whole and it not be connected to it, or made them partly whole, whether it's through all the other offerings that they have for those publishers. And then I think there's number three, the reality, and it's probably more Magnite than PubMatic. These are important partners for publishers, and they bring significant revenue, significant demand. And I don't think that it's to the point, at least right now, where publishers can turn off Magnite and PubMatic. So I think it's a little bit, this is just a road that they need to plow through. On the other side, it probably gives BD people at some of these, other SSPs some good opportunity. On the other side, I think it probably puts Trade Desk in an interesting position with, all of what they're doing around OpenPath. It's a weird one because they're big public companies.
Yeah, Matt Barish is just taking meeting after meeting. He's bringing his little cute baby to the meetings, trying to close deals.
As he should. It gives them a real window of opportunity.
Matt is the person we mentioned the most on this podcast, but don't invite on. We'll have you on eventually, Matt.
Besides Elon.
Besides Elon, yeah. Also is noteworthy, Google is not clawing back, but with that said, and we talked about this at the time, Google's actual balance in the bankruptcy proceeding was kind of low, and that's basically because they're just vicious about turning people off if you don't pay your bills. You do not want to negotiate with Google's accounts receivable department. They don't negotiate. It's really just a bot that collects your money or turns you off. That's a advantage of scale. I think if other platforms were so aggressive with collections, they would get a lot less revenue. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Speaking of PubMatic, so PubMatic put out a new product, or they announced a new product called Convert, which is a commerce media product. It sounds like it does everything. I'm sort of a little bit scratching my head as to what it is, because it says that it does sponsored listing ads, display ads, connected TV ads, on-site and off-site monetization, and it's for retailers. So this sounds exciting. I'd love to see a demo. I'd love to see what it is, because it sounds like it's a lot of stuff. And this follows on PubMatic announcing a couple of months ago its buy-side product. So it seems like they're doing a lot of product development and innovation, trying to get out of the just being an SSP.
It kind of sounds like X, the everything app. Who knows what was it that Linda Recchierino tweeted? I'm trying to find it, but who knows what the possibilities will be?
Lara,
big.
Do you ever look at some of the press releases coming your way and just have to diagram the sentences and try to figure out a Beautiful Mind style what they're talking about?
Yes, although more often than not, I don't really get past the subject line. I just archive or read later.
Eric, you cover retail media, commerce media a lot. Is this interesting? Is this a game changer?
I have no idea. I'm not trying to troll or be facetious or anything. PubMatic's a great company. It says it does everything that a commerce media seller might want. So I think it's cool conceptually. Leave it at that. I haven't seen the demo.
To give PubMatic the credit it deserves for this, credit, but I also didn't know much about this, so I spoke with Kieran O'Kane of Wirecorp before the show, so I could cheat, and he gave me some crib notes. But basically, he said Is he a friend of the show, by the way? I don't know.
Yeah, he's been on in the past.
Oh, good. Friend of the show, not just kind of ad tech adjacent.
This show doesn't have any enemies that I know of.
Yeah.
We're trying to make them as quickly as possible.
Publish this episode. But yeah, he thinks it's super smart because kind of product listings is the kind of best game in town for ad tech companies like Pragmatic, because the real opportunity is aggregating the kind of mid to long tail of commerce media and retail media sites. So he thinks that mid to long tail is the big opportunity, especially when OpenRTB comes to retail media.
Okay, that's interesting. I think that the SSPs have traditionally not had a big role here because the ads, the product listing ads, just are not standardized, so they aren't usually sold via RTB, and so I think that's what Kieran's getting at a little bit, which is if you could sell them by RTB, that would be better. And it's a big opportunity, retail media, so they're throwing in their hat. All right, more news. We have a lot of news today. Let's do France saying that Apple is anti-competitive. So France has been investigating Apple for its ATT privacy program, and they announced that they are moving forward with some sort of investigation about Apple being anti-competitive by basically kneecapping everyone else's ad network while launching their own. This is interesting. I mean, European governments are finding all kinds of creative ways to harass American companies. This is a new one. I think a lot of people feel this way, that Apple has been talking out of two sides of its mouth about this whole thing. It'd be pretty interesting to see what the outcome could be. I could kind of speculate, but I don't really have any real thoughts. Has anyone, Lara, have you looked at this at all?
Yeah, this has been ongoing for quite a while, actually. I think I covered the initial complaint when I was at DigiDay. So this has been going, I guess, ever since AT&T, even before it rolled out. I think at this stage, Apple still has a chance to kind of respond before the regulator makes a final decision. So these things just take forever. But I mean, yeah, look, it is kind of no coincidence that ATT launches and then Apple's search business goes bananas. That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
Even though they say the two are definitely 100% not connected, according to the professor who we paid to put out a white paper.
Also, the way that they ask for permission to track you on their device is so friendly for Apple and so horrible for everybody else.
Let us help you. Let us guide you across our.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it always does seem like France does things that might benefit Criteo at some point. I mean, Criteo is effectively the champion, local champion of ad tech in Europe, and it's always France that does things that are kind of that you kind of scratch your head and wonder if there's some influence there.
Funny that. Although I think the UK has a similar case, doesn't it? As the CMA was looking into something similar, and I don't know who our ad tech champion is at this point.
Right, and the CMA has established its authority to regulate the Google sandbox, which was kind of fascinating because they came to an agreement, a while back that any rollout of the sandbox was going to need CMA approval.
Any idea what the largest fine for a technology company France has ever levied and made to pay?
There was that giant fine against Facebook, but I don't think that was France.
Apple has $50 billion of cash and marketable securities, and I think they're going to do what Apple's going to do.
Yeah, if it's a fine, if the remedy is a fine, if the remedy is turn off your ad network in France, that's maybe a little bit more aggressive, but they could do that too.
Yeah, how big is the ad network in France?
Yeah, right. If anyone knows the size of Apple's ad network in France, that's the most obscure ad tech question I could possibly imagine. So Roblox has an ad network. Everyone has an ad network. Everything's an ad network. No. What do you mean no?
Go ahead. Read the description. I have thoughts.
So basically, this is ads in Roblox games. So Roblox is a platform where independent publishers can create Roblox games and they monetize them. And this is effectively being able to show ads in these games that are either experiences, like click-in experiences, or promotions for other games.
Correct. Eric Seufert has done so many great things to shed light on how this this wave of first-party driven ad sellers and ad networks have exploded and created a lot of value. But the phrase "everything is an ad network" is now being used, I think, a little bit too widely. And on this one, I think, and again, I'm not a Roblox expert, it might not be the right term to be used. An ad network is when you have aggregation across multiple properties, multiple areas. If all of the activity is happening on Roblox, its own media entity, right? So I think, thematically, and I understand, where Eric's going with everything is an ad network. It's really, every scaled first party data player can build an ad offering. And I think, this is less another ad network, more another potential walled garden that we need to be taking seriously and has the benefit or the opportunity to be like really, really big, really scalable. But I think it's interesting, and again, I'm an ad network founder. I think there's nuance to this whole thing that it's the reaction as soon as there's another ad platform announcement that I don't know if it's necessarily the right phrasing, the right terminology.
Sure. I get that. I mean, I think that from reading about the ad creatives, I think it's mostly click in to other games or experiences in the games as well. So this is a little bit different from what people have been working on. One interesting, just to tie a lot of bows together, Anzu did that big fundraise a couple months ago. They claimed to serve ads into Roblox, and I think they're not allowed to. So I think Roblox is trying to stamp out people who serve ads into Roblox games that are not Roblox. I don't know if that's anti-competitive or against the rules or what. I don't know if that's a big part of Anzu's business, but I just want to kind of bring that up. That's an interesting little conflict there.
I really think the future is for those who can do it, a lot of walled gardens. And then to Lara's point via here and earlier, there's probably a mid to long tail that become, part of bigger plays, bigger networks.
Yep, I get that. Roblox also has, very young audience, so you have to be very careful with the data so that doesn't, it does lend itself pretty well to a walled garden approach. Last topic. This just came out this morning. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that a year in, Netflix is turning the dials a little bit on its ad program. A couple of things in the article. First, that they may be lowering the pricing. One of the noteworthy aspects of the deal they signed was that Microsoft guaranteed a very high CPMs. I think it was reported to be $65 CPMs globally. So that was a guarantee. Right. And that's just crazy. That's a crazy high number. Even as great as the experience of seeing an ad on Netflix probably is for the advertiser, still a high number. So they're talking about lowering the price, and also there was some mention about bringing in other partners. So I don't know how that is playing out. Otherwise, most of the buzz around the Netflix ad program is that it's off to a good start and has been exciting for the company. Lara, is this something you've been looking into?
Yeah, I kind of feel like we've seen this movie play out before when tech platform comes in big and bulky with insane CPMs. You get a couple of marquee brands that want to say they were first and they take it up, and then you get back to renewal time and there's no way they're going to pay those CPMs anymore, and everyone negotiates and we all find ourselves in a kind of more comfortable place. I think this kind of the interesting aspects I think are going to be on the Microsoft side. I think it was always kind of a given that exclusive relationship was only temporary, and the question was whether Netflix would build in-house, buy some ad tech itself, or maybe partner with other technology companies to bring in more demand. I know that they posit in the article maybe the Trade Desk or FreeWheel, which would both would kind of make sense, maybe less so FreeWheel just because of Comcast, I don't know. But so yeah, as I say, the interesting thing for me is if Netflix just completely abandons Xandr, maybe it does, maybe it still would continue to work with them, but yeah, what does this kind of mean for Xandr as it sits within kind of Microsoft advertising? Does that, is Xandr kind of long for this world, at least as a kind of standalone brand? There's been a lot of change and restructuring there. Still a massive business, still has a massive international business. I'm not saying it goes away, but I'm just wondering what that kind of signifies about that
Well, there was news last week. We didn't cover it on the pod just for time, but Mike Welch, the former GM of Xandr, left, and he joined Captify, which is a performance. I want to call them an ad network. I'm not sure what else to call them, as CEO. So Captify got a new CEO with very seasoned executive, but Xandr lost their head, which that doesn't seem great.
I think Lara's points were right on. It's still so early for them. We did cover the Netflix earnings and, the commentary around the CFO saying it's just, it's like 1 million or so users, or 1.5 million users on this ad-supported tier. It's just too early to even sort of consider this stuff. But I would imagine that there's a combination of partnerships, that are demand side facing, and a strong in-house effort that once they're ready to open up the floodgates, so to speak, kick this thing off, and it's going to be an absolute monster. I do hear a lot about Xandr. That said, just in the ad tech ecosystem and companies like building on and using, like, the tech is prolific. The company is prolific for sure. I mean, true to the DNA.
Yeah. I think the market could use a little guidance as to where they're headed, because their strategic direction changed a couple of times through AT&T and now at Microsoft, and I think folks aren't hearing from them enough. So with that, I think we're going to call it an episode. So this was a great conversation, a lot of news, a lot of exciting, interesting stuff. I suspect there's more to come from Lara in the coming days, so I'm excited about that. So Lara, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you. This is really fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Lara.
Eric, always a pleasure.
Always.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.